You're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org. And this is the Home Business Success Show. Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eder, also known as Hank the PR Guy. Folks who run home businesses have some great advantages over brick and mortar businesses. They also face unique challenges. As we speak with home business entrepreneurs on the show each week, we'll gain valuable insights on how to balance business and life and to share best practices for people who run home businesses. Our first guest is Lori Sky Twohy. Lori Sky Twohy is an award-winning photographer originally from Southern California who has called the Asheville area her home for over 10 years. Lori came here to be part of the live music scene as the owner and lead photographer for her blog, jambandsonline.com. It was a fresh start from losing her fine art nature photography gallery in Palm Springs to the 2008 economic crash, and photographing live music here and all over the East Coast became her new art, using her documentary and portrait background to master her skill at creating the journalistic images needed in the articles she publishes. With COVID hitting the concert and festival business in a large way, Lori spent the lockdown launching her new business, the 555 Photographer, aimed at doing more commercial, portrait, and wedding photography, which is what she did in California for 20 years before getting into the music photography business here in Asheville. Welcome to the show, Lori.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hey, it's the 555 Photographer.
Okay, the 555 Photographer.
Kind of comes from the name of the song.
There you go. What song is that?
It's called the 555 by Fish.
Oh, by Fish, of course.
They're my inspiration for the Jam Bands Online website.
They are one of today's most prolific and wonderful jam bands, for sure.
Yes.
Okay, well, when did you start doing photography and how did you get started in the business?
Well, when I was a kid, I came from a kind of a dysfunctional childhood. My parents were kind of unstable, moved around a lot, alcoholism, and a lot of people had that kind of upbringing. But with my alcoholic family, they like to move a lot, break up, get back together, move. And when I was about 8 years old, I started to think about how much I missed my friends at each school. And I was at a garage sale one day and I bought a camera for 25 cents at a garage sale when I was 8 years old. It's kind of sad when you think about it that way, but look what it did for me. It became my whole life. I wanted to take pictures of my friends at school in case we had to move again so I could have a memory of them. And then from there, I just started, for some reason, it was the one thing my parents, encouraged me with. They'd always buy me a camera for Christmas. And at one point I would pose my Barbie dolls like they were models. And if we went on a road trip out to nature, I would snap little nature pictures. And and then in the 7th grade, my middle school had a photography class. So I took that. And so I was entering contests and in the dark room. And I just said, this is what I want to be when I grow up. And then my family was really poor and a lot of dysfunction and a lot of unstable stuff. And I just had that entrepreneur spirit from, and I kind of knew that my parents weren't going to be able to put me through college. They couldn't afford to feed us. So I'm not going to college. So I took advantage of the school's equipment. And I took photography every year in junior high and high school and yearbook class so that by the time I graduated high school, I would have a career. And then that's what I did. Right out of high school, I started photographing. I was a photographer at golf courses in Palm Springs selling souvenir pictures. I started photographing my friends' weddings, like the friends that were really dumb and got married really young, you know, I would offer to photograph their weddings for free to get practice. And it kind of just went from there, eventually starting my own business, doing the golf photography and weddings. And then eventually I started traveling in the summers and got into nature photography. So that became more of an art. And it was a good business before digital was invented. I was working full time throughout the 90s, pretty established in Palm Springs. And after digital was invented, a lot of people, it became cool to become a photographer, and Photoshop was the new way. And I didn't have any training in that. And it was a pretty good business up until it got a little challenging after digital was invented.
Do you miss the darkroom? I did some courses like that when I was in journalism school, and there was just something so unique about the smell in the darkroom,
Yeah,
the photochemicals.
Film photography made you feel like you're really creating an art, a physical art. There was no screen on the back. You know, sometimes I feel like the screen on the back makes you feel like you're cheating. You know what I mean? Like, you had to go to school, you had to learn about f-stops and shutter speeds and lighting, you know, especially if you're going to photograph somebody's wedding. You know what I mean? And you had to know what you're, but yeah, I kind of miss the excitement of going and picking up. It's not so much the darkroom, because that was only in high school and college that I was actually in the darkroom. But I miss the excitement of, you know, after I was a professional, I had a professional lab that did all my processing. And I kind of just missed the excitement of going there a week later and talking to the guys who worked at the lab and picking up my pictures and seeing which ones, how they turned out. You know, like, it's too much instant gratification right now.
Yeah, I get that. I get that.
Yeah.
What was it about Asheville that made you want to bring your business here from California?
Well, I had finally got on board with the digital thing, and I was making it. I was getting, I'd gone back to school in my 30s. I was getting art scholarships. I had been doing a lot of traveling. In Palm Springs, it's a very seasonal town like Asheville, except for, you know, Asheville's like very year round, but there it was like during the summer, it's really hot. And so the season would slow down, and I would travel a lot and do a lot of nature photography. And I finally opened my own gallery after exhibiting at other people's galleries. Me and my ex-boyfriend, who was also a photographer, opened a huge studio and art gallery in like 2007. And it was always my dream to have my own studio. And so there was a portrait studio in the back and an art gallery with all my award-winning nature photography in the front. And we had a huge grand opening with the ribbon cutting and the chamber. And then the economy crash hit. And, you know, the economy crash was a real estate crash. So who's going to be buying art when there's no house to decorate, you know? And that was the end of that. Invested about $30,000 in that project, and then because the studio didn't work out, then the relationship didn't work out, and then right around that time, my favorite band got back together, Fish, after being broken up for a few years, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. I just lost everything. I was homeless. Everything I'd worked for was gone, and I just, you know, I was like, how am I going to go see the reunion concerts when I don't have any money, and it's all on the East Coast? And then I got on Facebook and I started reconnecting with old friends from the Fish community from before they broke up in 2004. And then all of a sudden somebody suggested, well, you're a photographer, you know, photographers get free tickets. You take pictures of the band and they'll let you in. And I'm like, oh my God, I've always wanted to be a concert photographer. That's been a dream since high school. Because I'm a huge music fanatic. I'd been to hundreds of concerts. I'd even seen Fish in Europe, you know, and I was like, and then so I went online and I started writing the Fish people, and I was gonna make up that I worked for this online website taking pictures, and I was like, no, why don't I really do this? And so that's where the idea for Jam Bands Online came, and I came up with the idea for that name, and I bought it like on GoDaddy, and I just went on Facebook and I announced to everybody that I was going to start a music website and go see Fish on the East Coast and start writing about and photographing music. And everybody online who knew all the hardships I was going through, because I was going through some personal stuff too, not just business, but it seemed like everything was falling apart. And next thing you know, I didn't make it to the original 3 reunion shows in Hampton that March of '09, but I made it to their summer reunion tour. And I borrowed some money from a friend, I rented a car, and I set out on the road, couch surfing and living all over the country on Fish tour, marketing my website in the parking lot with business cards. And it only took a couple of months to start getting photo passes and to start getting interviews with smaller musicians first, and networking. And I got a lot of other writers and photographers like on the internet to contribute. And it only took us about 6 months before we got our first Fish press passes. And it took off from there. And then by about 10 years ago, I was on my birthday weekend, I was in Alpine Valley, Wisconsin, photographing my favorite band from the photo pit. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I just lost everything and I was literally homeless, but moments like that made me feel like I was really succeeded at something, because it's such a passion. I mean, photography and music are the two things in my life that have always been there through all the hard times that I described earlier in my childhood and ups and downs of my business. And it's always been, and then so as I was on tour that year, my friends were like, what are you doing after tour? Are you going back to, because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but Fish is kind of like the Grateful Dead. People follow them around on tour and go to lots of concerts, It's like more of a subculture and a cult, like a cult following, I was like, I don't want to go back to California. Nothing there for me anymore. And like, where you would really fit in is Asheville, North Carolina. And Fish had actually played here that summer, but I didn't go to that particular show because it was such a small venue that they played and I couldn't get a ticket. And I was like, you mean the place where I couldn't get a ticket? And they're, oh yeah, you've never been to Asheville? You'd fit in there. Like, it's very like artsy and lots of nature and very liberal and very, I'm like, oh my God, it sounds incredible. And I had two other people tell me the same thing that didn't even know each other. I was like, I gotta go check this place out. And so I came out here for a Christmas jam that year, and everyone was right. I fell in love. And I was like, this is where I gotta live. This is where I gotta run JBO. And then eventually I opened another website, AshevilleJams.com. But
that's great. I mean, that's a pretty roundabout way of getting here, but you got here and stayed, except for the times that you've gone back on tours and traveled with the bands.
I've lived here for 10 years, but I still go and travel all the time in the summer. This was the first summer that I didn't go on Fish or String Cheese Incident tour in 10 years. And
well, of course, you had no control over that.
Yeah, and it's been really hard. It's been really depressing, to be honest. That was kind of my whole life, like after the '08 thing and now this.
Right. Well, how many years have you been running your photography business without a brick and mortar studio? And what would you say are some advantages to running a home-based photography business?
Well, I learned the hard way from what I told you earlier, that my one brick and mortar cost me $30,000 that I never got back. And my credit was ruined and I ended up homeless for a long time. But I made the most of my homelessness by traveling the country, photographing music. There was a lot of ups and downs, though. I got to tell you, that was kind of scary a lot of times. Too much stories for that short amount of time. But so it wasn't all, there was like ups and downs, but now that I'm established and I haven't been homeless in a few years, I've been established in Asheville, doing it from home is the only way. Even before COVID, I still run my business on my home. I just went out on the road to take the pictures, but now I'm more focused on getting back into working with individual clients, because I was mostly photographing events. I photographed sporting events like golf tournaments during the day and concerts at night, and those are all canceled, till this is over. And I'm looking to get back into working with clients and getting back into the kinds of photography I did in the 90s and 2000s, portraits and weddings and commercial photography. So that
time will come again, because this can't last forever, and then you'll get back to doing whatever it is that you like to do the most. But in the meantime, you took this opportunity to reinvent yourself as the 555 photographer.
Yes.
And that's an interesting thing. Before I ask you some questions about that, I just want to remind everybody that you're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org. And this is the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eder. My guest in this segment is Lori Sky Twohy, the 555 photographer. Okay, well, COVID-19 brought the live music industry basically to a screeching halt.
Yeah.
In that time, you launched your new business, 555, the 555 photographer.
Yes.
Please explain what types of photographic services you offer here in the local area.
Well, right now, the website I just designed has a few samples of what I'm available to do. I'd like to start working with local businesses. There's a food photography section. So if you have a restaurant and you'd like to start selling, have some nice photography on your website or your social media of your menu, I could come in and photograph food. My history with golf tournament photography, which is now, like I said, kind of dead because of COVID. With my award-winning landscape photography of nature, I now want to start photographing golf courses, the landscape pictures for the golf course industry. I'm also available for portraits, family portraits. I'd like to start photographing bands for their promotional material instead of just live on stage with for the journalistic thing. I think it would be a lot of fun while the musicians are off tour right now. Maybe they can come and finally get those promo shots done that they've been wanting to do. Spend a few hours. You get 5 hours of photography, and that's about a good time for the shoot. And we could do like an outdoor location, posed photos, and then we could go into their practice session. They could jam, and I could take live shots of them jamming during practice and put together a disc or, a little card that they can have afterwards after I do all the editing. And they'll get large files for their promotional material, and they'll get small files that they could put on their Facebook page. And I think it'd be fun to work directly with businesses, that have a budget. I consider myself, I want to give back to, businesses are having a hard time. So I think I want to, help them get their advertising needs done at a reasonable.
Right. Well, I think we all get and understand portrait and wedding photography.
Yeah.
What sort of pictures would be done for a business in a commercial photography session?
Well, what I just described, I can photograph products. So for instance, if you have a online retail shop, I have a home studio, like a pop-up studio with lighting and backdrops. You can send over, I can come pick them up, all the products that you want to sell on your website or in your store, for instance. And that way you can have, like if you have an eBay or a shop, online store for all your products. Food photography is a lot of fun. So if you have a restaurant and you need all your menu items photographed, if you go to my website, you could see some samples of the food photography I've done. I think with food photography, it's, a lot of people want to save money and just use their cell phone picture. And I just don't recommend that. There's just something about using a professional photographer who understands the right lighting to make the food look really appetizing. There's a psychology that you learn about art school about taking pictures where you want to have the viewer have an emotional response, So it's why it's really important to hire a professional and not just save money and take pictures. I know cell phones can take great pictures nowadays as far as clarity, but there's nothing it can do for the right composition and the right lighting and the right, there's some things that you just need a professional for. But I also know that it's very competitive. So I try to make it competitive so that people feel comfortable hiring somebody with a lot of experience like me, 30 years experience, and not have to pay outrageous prices.
Yeah, I get that. So one of the advantages then to not having a brick and mortar studio is that the overhead is lower. But
Absolutely.
I understand that part of what you do involves offering a terrific value to your customers that may be just a fraction of what it might
Yes.
cost to use other photographers.
And I'm doing that on purpose because I would like to be, I'm a simple person. I don't need, a fancy house and a fancy car. Just put me back out to some Fish concerts when they come back, But I would like to be able to be competitive, and I want to get back into being booked full time, like I was pre 2008. I miss being busy. I miss taking pictures every day and meeting new people and dealing with clients individually.
Well, just put it out there and start seeing that happening. I think it's going to be happening more and more. Who would you say are your ideal customers for the 555 photographer?
I think, well, I do weddings also, but I consider myself kind of a budget wedding photographer because it's not my, so I have 20 years experience photographing weddings. So I think I would like to, photograph smaller weddings, more intimate weddings, like out in the mountains and stuff. But mostly I'd like to work with businesses to help them photograph their food, their products. If you run a golf course, photograph landscape pictures of the property for your website. Basically anybody that has something they'd like to sell online, I think. But also the pictures can be used for your advertising. So if you need a shot for a billboard or for a sign outside your window, I have the,
Or brochures or annual reports, those kind of things.
Basically, you'll get the large files and the small files of all the pictures. The large files are what you use for your big advertising, and your small files what you use on the internet, so it doesn't take an hour to upload it to your website.
Okay. Do you do any kind of interior photography, like if businesses want their showrooms to be photographed?
Yes, in fact, right now I am starting to do that. It's not on the website yet, but I wanted to photograph somebody's property first and then upload that. I'm going to include that on the 555 photographer's website soon, because I'm hearing that online house purchasing is huge right now. And a lot of people, because of COVID, are buying houses online. So I have some of my music photographer friends who are also not on tour right now have been making a living doing that, and I'm really interested in that. So that's something I'm interested in. It's just not on the website yet. I don't have a sample on the website gallery yet, but soon.
Yeah, I have definitely heard that the housing business, especially in the Asheville area, is booming.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah. So if anybody needs that, I'm ready to do that, even though there aren't any samples on my website. Maybe yours will be the ones that end up on my website. First one who thought. But you could get a sense by the quality of all my pictures that my interior house real estate pictures will be just as high quality as my wedding photography.
Very good. Can you share some really creative uses that a business might be able to use some of their commercial photography sessions for?
I think social media is huge right now. Also with everybody, right now with COVID, there's a lot of food delivery going on with DoorDash and Uber Eats and things like that. I think it's really important to have pictures of your food on your website or social media for the people that are trying to decide what to order without coming into the restaurant. So for instance, the way I have of photographing the food photography is that I've done in the past is because there are a lot of food photographers who will come into the restaurant when you're closed and have the chef cook all the food, and then you got to throw it away. So my idea was to set up a table in the back near the kitchen with my lighting, and then when the customers order their food, they just put it down real quick to get his picture taken and deliver it to the customer. And it works out great because by the end of the night, almost every item on the menu has been ordered. And then the few things that haven't been ordered, then they could just make those at the end. We could And then I could have, you know, your pictures delivered within a week after I do some touch-ups on Photoshop, etc. online.
To me, that sounds like a real win-win, because then we're not wasting food, and the
Exactly.
restaurant is not losing money, and
Exactly.
you're economizing the use of your time while being there. That's great.
Yeah.
Over the years, you've done a lot of musical acts.
Yeah.
Would you tell me, of all those musical acts that you've captured over the years, is there one that's been more photogenic and more fun, and just the ones that you enjoy most? And if you can share a short story about what happened with them.
Okay, well, I'll have to just say it's Fish. They're my favorite band, and anybody who's seen them knows that Trey Anastasio, their lead singer and guitar player, is not only just a musical genius, but he makes the best faces when he's shredding his guitar and really in the zone. And so I photographed him now like 50 times between Fish and his solo projects. And every single time is a totally different experience, because he really is so passionate. He's either making these crazy shreddy O faces, or he's smiling huge because he's so happy. And then there's so many times where he makes eye contact with me. Like, it's almost like he's used to seeing me down there, and he plays for the camera. And like at Bonnaroo last year, he played like what seemed like a whole solo just for me and this other photographer next to me. And I got like 100 pictures of him playing right into the camera. But another story I'll say real quick that's really special to me is that Tom Petty passed away. You know, mostly in the jam band scene, but occasionally I get to photograph real like mainstream musicians and legends. And Tom Petty, before he passed away, reunited his old band Mudcrutch from that he was in the 70s before he started the Heartbreakers. And I got to photograph Tom Petty at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville. So who would have known he would end up passing away just a year later? So as far as my own personal passion, I love photographing Trey Anastasio from Fish. But as far as just mainstream, like being at the right place at the right time, I'm so grateful I get to photograph the Tom Petty before we lost him. Those pictures mean so much to me at the Ryman Auditorium. It's like one of the most famous venues in the world, you know.
Right. There must be so many stories you have from the road that I'd love to be able to share with you. But
well, let me mention one more thing. I guess I should mention that if anybody wants to see my concert photography, that's on my Instagram. I'm working on a fine art photography for my music. Also, that's not up yet, but my Instagram is at LST_images, LST images with the underscore if anyone wants to see.
LSE, like the letter E?
No, like my initials, Lori Sky Twohy, LST images.
Oh, LST.
Yeah.
LSTE?
Not
yeah, I
not
know.
that hippie stuff with the D.
Yeah, not the hippie stuff.
LST_images on Instagram.
All right.
Tom Petty and Trey are all over that.
Very good. I'd like to take a look at some of those myself, and I wish that I had more time to share stories of the road with you here. I understand that there is a meaning beyond the fact that your name 555 was from a song. I understand there is a meaning to your name, the 555 photographer. How can our listeners get in touch with you to learn what that means and to book a photography session?
All you have to do is go to the 555photographer.com, and it explains exactly. It's a song, but it's also a little code for something as well. So go to my website and you'll see all the photography I mentioned, and you'll see where you can call me or email me for a photo shoot.
The 555photographer.com. Okay.
Or you email me, Lori, and my email is Lori@the555photographer.com.
Lori, Lori,
Yes.
for people who don't know, Lori at the555photographer.com. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today. I've enjoyed this session, and I hope that we can do this again someday.
For sure. I'd love to come back after my fine art photography website is up, where I'm going to be selling limited edition prints of music and nature.
Very good. Well, let's keep me posted when that is.
Well, thank you.
And thank you once again. You're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org. And this is the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eder. My next guest, Dawn Westmoreland, believes that employees and employers should be empowered to work in safe and respectful work environments. She stood up to the second largest federal agency in the United States for bullying her for being a whistleblower. Dawn paid a very high price for speaking up about the lack of Black employees and nepotism in her workplace, but in the end, she had a very successful outcome. Dawn began helping other people who experienced harassment in the workplace as a human resources consultant for 29 years. Life coach, speaker, a life coach, speaker, author, and host of the Empowered Whistleblower talk show right here on WPVM. You can learn more about her at www.workplacebullyingsupport.com. Welcome to the show, Dawn.
Hi, Hank. Thank you for having me on your show. Such a pleasure.
Well, the pleasure's mine. Dawn, you call your show the Empowered Whistleblower, and you published a book by that name. Please tell us what that's all about.
Well, being that this is a 30-minute radio show, let me make it very brief. I was working in the second largest federal agency in the United States, which is called the Veteran Affairs. And with my background in human resources, at this time, this is 7 years ago, I had 22 years of experience in HR. And one of the things that I noticed was the lack of Black employees, and later it was deemed that there was racial discrimination and nepotism, which is hiring of family and friends. It happens all the time in the federal government, but it's illegal to hire family and friends when you're in a position of power. So I spoke up, and then I got retaliated for almost 2 years. And one of the things that the management did to, the worst thing that happened is that they cut off my paycheck, lost everything, had to start all anew. And I documented everything. I learned a lot about the process, did most of my own work, and then brought in an attorney at the end. And then I ended up settling without a non-disclosure agreement, and that's pretty unusual. But, I had the background at HR, and I did a lot of my own work. So it propelled me forward to, and I'm passionate. That's the why. Why do I do this kind of work? I'm passionate about people being able to stand up to workplace bullying. And that goes for employees or employers. So that's what, the show is about. I'm a peer host, just like you, and with WPVM FM 103.7. And I'm excited, to have safe and respectful work environments. So I wrote about it in a book. I've written 2 more books that will be published. And, I love calling it the Empowered Whistleblower because I'm always blowing the whistle on workplace issues. How can we make things better?
Well, that's a very noble cause because so many people are in the workplace. Not everybody is an entrepreneur. More people are out there in the workplace, and they need to be valued, I believe, for who and what they are and what they bring to the companies. In the federal government, you mentioned that it's illegal to hire friends and relatives. Of course, that doesn't seem to mean all that much to the federal government, but I won't go there. But in the private sector, there are certain guidelines, I think, that need to be followed as well. Of course, in the private sector, a guy can put his brother on as the, chief financial officer, and that's okay. But in the private sector, there needs to be guidelines for how to treat employees. And I think, am I correct that once a company is bigger than a certain size, it has to follow certain guidelines, or did I imagine that?
No, I don't think you imagine that, Hank. You might be referring to what called the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has different guidelines, and it has to do with discrimination, where you have to have a certain amount of employees for different discriminations, protected discriminations. It might be you have to have 12 employees, or you might have to have 15. So there's different categories of discrimination. It could be age, disability, LGBTQ, QI. It could be, sexual harassment. Retaliation is one of the biggest forms of retaliation. retaliation is the biggest form of, I can't get it out, but discrimination within the government. It's been a long day, Hank. Yes.
That's okay. Do you believe that Congress needs to enact some kind of legislation to protect whistleblowers in both the private and the public sectors?
Well, they have, and even the Veteran Affairs has done that, but they manage their own program, which I think that's a bad thing. You don't want your own company or federal agency governing, and being their own watchdog. If you really believe that you're running a great federal agency, then you need to have an outsider looking in and doing audits.
Well, how prevalent are bullying and harassment in workplaces? And what are some ways we might begin to address that constructively?
Well, in companies and in the federal agency, in the private and public sector, it's pretty prevalent. I mean, I get contacted all the time with, issues that are going on. And you would think, Hank, that, employees working from home virtual, the ones that can work from home, on computer, you would think, oh my goodness, there's less incivility, but actually now I'm finding out that there's a lot of micromanagement, microaggression, higher expectations. Maybe companies have lost money, through COVID, and a lot of pressure. So there's still a lot of incivility going on in the workplace. And that workplace could be working at home behind a computer, working for another person. That still is happening.
So then when you're talking about micromanagement, you mean the fact that somehow the supervisors or the bosses need to be involved in every minute detail of the worker's productivity?
Right. I mean, that's a really like a soul killer. It just destroys the morale of an employee is if they're trained. Now, if they're not trained, they might need a little bit more supervisory, involvement. But if they're trained, a true leader will tell the person what to do, the employee, they back off, let them do the job. And, if they're not doing the job right, yes, they come in and they give them feedback and evaluate. But, to sit there and nitpick and just, be a helicopter employer, it just doesn't work. It kills morale. It kills trust. And then when people are not happy, they move on to other positions or other jobs.
So unfortunately for a lot of workers, that's sometimes their only recourse is they don't like what's going on, so they have to search somewhere else and get another position. Most of the time, there's not really a way to stop bosses from acting that way.
Yeah, I just had this discussion earlier because I actually gave a radio interview this morning, and we were talking about the differences between being a manager, managing people, managing resources, and true leadership, which a leader is leading, she is, taking care of the job, the mission, but also taking care of the people.
Okay, so that's definitely one of the differences between a manager and a leader. Mm-hmm. And to the best of my knowledge, the best leaders lead by example. They show rather than tell.
Yes.
Okay, that's also one of the tenets of film writing. If you're writing a movie script, you're supposed to show rather than tell. That's how you know if you're watching a good movie. And if they're telling too much, it's not a good script. Give a short background, if you would, of how you began your at-home business 7 years ago.
Well, I settled with the Veteran Affairs. As I said, that would be about March 2013. And I basically realized that, I was really good at what I was doing, standing up for myself. And now I have just about 30 years of experience, in human resources. And word got out really quickly. And I decided, hey, maybe I should take these skill sets and, and help other people. And how could I do it? Well, I decided I don't want to work for somebody else. I've already retired once from the Air Force when I was 40 years old. Now I'm 56 years old, and I don't want to work for the man or the woman anymore. And now I want to work for myself. So, I become a life coach, a consulting hypnotist, advanced hypnotist. I've written some books, do a little bit of speaking, and probably right now, mostly consulting. And I just took all those different tools and I thought, hey, this is really cool. This is mobile. I can do it, mom who's in North Florida. I can do it from my home. I can do it just about anywhere. So, I thought, wow, what a gift to be able to work for myself. And that's what I've been doing the last 7 years. And I love it because now, like tomorrow, I'm going to take the day off, a beautiful day, and I'm going to go kayaking with a friend. But I do work on Saturdays and Sundays. Being an entrepreneur is still being responsible.
Very good. Well, that's one of the advantages that I speak of at the beginning of the show that home businesses have. They have a flexible scheduling, but like you say, you have to balance it, because the temptation would be to go kayaking 5 days a week, I suppose. And many of us.
Yeah. I was working Sunday, all day Sunday.
Many of us would if we could. Dawn, you mentioned consulting. What does consulting look like for you? Is it consulting companies in dealing with their employees and improving employee and management relations?
Well, what I did do is for probably about 20 months, I wrote for a couple of different organizations writing. And so when I wrote, I did a lot of advising through writing. I haven't done any direct consulting with companies at this time. What I have done is I have done consulting with employees, directly helping them, stand up to workplace bullying and discrimination. I have worked with some individuals that are not employees who have not gone into companies at this point. That's next on my bucket list.
Oh, so that's definitely on your agenda to go in and do like trainings, workshops, and seminars and things for management and rank and file kind of relationships. That's very
Absolutely.
good. I worked for a company in the late 80s, early 90s, and I'm not going to name the company, but they were so fond of saying all the time, our employees are our greatest resource. But yet they didn't go out of their way to treat the employees all that well. And if they had an opportunity to buy a piece of equipment, even if it cost them, $750,000, if it would replace 15 employees, they would do it in a heartbeat. So everybody at that company knew that it was just lip service they were paying. And I guess a lot of that goes around.
It does. Unfortunately, it does.
Mm-hmm. How can home businesses with remote workforces, let me back this one up. We think of a home business as one woman or one man sitting there on a computer doing things, but there can be home businesses who have employees and they have remote workforces. How can home businesses with remote workforces ensure a safe and productive environment for their employees?
Well, right now, North Carolina, which, you and I live pretty close to each other, the thing is like in our state, we're supposed to be wearing masks. So, if somebody has to work with another person, employee, if they're in the same area, definitely wear a mask. If they're at home by themselves, is to encourage them to be comfortable enough that if they're feeling sick or ill, or they feel like, hey, I need to take some time off, go see the doctor. I just want to get checked out because I'm not feeling good. It could be because of the stress of all the, pandemic, all the political stuff going on and such. And so you have to be very, as an employee, you have to be very good at engaging with your employees, building trust with them, telling it it's okay. We all get sick. You never expect that you'll get sick. And just, building that trust, the best thing is building engagement so that the employee can trust the employer.
So it's definitely a two-way street. The employee has to feel confident enough to bring issues up to their managers without fear of reprisal or negative consequences.
Absolutely.
Are there any books particularly that employers can find, or home businesses that have remote workforces? Are there books that these types of managers can find that would help them to set up a really healthy corporate environment for their employees?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. There's one, and I know the FCC rules say we cannot curse, but it's the no. I'll substitute the no a-hole, rule. And it's a really good leadership book. Seriously, it comes up a lot in my interviews and such. But if you look it up, that's one of many good books. And just going to Amazon and, or somewhere where you buy books and just finding out reviews, who's got a lot of good reviews. I know Brigitte Hyacinth, if you look her up, Brigitte, Brigitte, Hyacinth, like the flower, she just wrote a really exceptional book, and it's really geared at employers treating employees better. And I really like her work.
Do you know what the name of that book is?
I can't think of it right now, but if you Google her name and her books come up, it's her most recent book.
Very good. I would just like to remind everyone you're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org, and this is the Home Business Success Show. I'm your host, Hank Eder. My guest in this segment is Dawn Westmoreland. What are some aspects of a company's culture that you feel can be improved so employees feel more valued and they feel safe?
Well, there's been a Gallup poll out for some time, and a lot of leadership coaches talk about this and consultant, that there's 59% of employees have been interviewed or polled, and the lack of engagement would be, trusting your employees, the two-way communication, maybe that employee needs to have some buy-in instead of just always being told we're going to do this and never being told why. So, lack of engagement plays a very big factor, because, people will work in situations where they're not the happiest. Maybe it's not the greatest job in the world, but they will follow a leader, through hell.
I see where you're going with that. And a real quick thing I can tell you is that in the very late 80s, I was in between jobs and I did some temp work for a while. There's some temp agencies, that would send you on assignments. And I was at a bank in the Miami area, and we were curing student loans, Sallie Mae loans, basically. Of course, I had no idea what that was about until I got there. But there were two gentlemen there, if I could call one of them such. One of them was a guy named Henry. He was really directly in charge of the division that we were in. And he was such a good man, a sweet man. He'd come in every day and he'd make sure everybody was all right. He'd buy coffee for people, he would just make sure everybody had what they needed. His boss, whose name escapes me, was really the exact opposite of Henry. He was a slave driver. He'd come in and hassle temporary employees, which was totally beneath the station that he had as an upper level manager. But when it came to, like, every now and then, Henry wouldn't get there in time, or he would be a little bit late coming back from lunch. And if this other guy came and asked us, "Where's Henry?" we would cover for Henry, because Henry would cover for us. And so, yeah, it's definitely a two-way channel of trust and engagement.
Absolutely. That's a great story, Hank. Love those kind of stories.
Mm-hmm. Well, branding and marketing are important to any business. Is this any different for home-based businesses?
I don't think so, Hank. The thing is that, when you're branding, it's also about the why, why are you doing this? What is in it for the person? Being recognized, standing out from other people, from if you do similar services or sell different products, you definitely want to stand out and be highly recognizable. I mean, just look at the Apple, we see that symbol, that icon, whatever you want to call it, we see it all the time, and we know instantly, we know the why. And I think marketing is so important. And, I'm going to give a shout out to a good friend of both of ours, Blaine Greenfield, who's been a marketing professor 30 something plus years, and he's volunteered for SCORE. And he says, just 15 minutes a day marketing, just 15 minutes a day marketing, on social media will bring in so much attention to the work that you do. But the bottom line is, it's not about us, our services, our products, how much training, how much school we have, how many degrees. It's what is in it for the customer. What pain are we solving? What product are we giving them that they need? It's all about them.
What kind of service are we providing? Yes, that helps them with a legitimate problem that they had. One of our guests a few weeks back, Brian Basilico from B2B Marketing in Chicago, he said that, and we were talking about, how you can't curse on the air, like you mentioned it a few minutes ago. And Brian said, well, I know that we can't, and yet I'd like to talk about how businesses we all over themselves. And what that means is that it's always we do this, we do this, we do this. But the ones that succeed are the ones that say, what's in it for you, the customer? What do I offer that's going to help you? If you get involved with me or my company, how is your life going to be better? And I think you've touched upon something very important here.
Yeah, it's just like coaching, Hank. I can tell people what I coach about, and I might think I know what that person wants, but the truth of the matter is it's their agenda. What do they want to get out of coaching? What do they want to get out of consulting?
Right. And then it's your job to give it to them.
Absolutely.
Is there some advice you would give to home-based business owners that maybe will help them succeed both short-term and even in the long term?
Yeah, it is so easy to, get caught up in the ego or, compare yourself to other people, and you just can't do that because, we just need to stay in our own lanes and believe in ourselves. And the truth is, really quickly, you find out when you start to be an entrepreneur, what are you good at? And then you find out awfully quick too, what you're not good at, because there's a rare person that's good at everything. They may have to get a little training. They may need to get a little mentoring. They may need to hire a business coach, a PR person, to assist them. But yeah, recognizing what are your strengths, where do you need help? And if you need help, you might need to put a little bit of time and money aside if you need to bring in some support.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes people need to farm out, outsource some things because there's business owners that are really good at what they do, but they're not good at certain things. And sometimes it makes more sense for them to budget the money to get the help with the things they're not good at, like maybe bookkeeping or even sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be mine, bookkeeping. I mean, I'm a big picture person. When it comes to minute things, oh my gosh, not my thing. So yeah, that's a great point, Hank.
Yeah. Is there anything we haven't covered that you'd like to say about anything about home business people, about whistleblowers, about anyone at all? Anything, anyone? What would you like to say that maybe we haven't covered?
Well, something, 2 days ago, I saw a social media post by somebody I really respect and admire. And he's a young man. His name is Cyrus Webb, and he's in, I think it's Brandon, Mississippi. He's been an entrepreneur for years, and he's always putting out inspiring posts. And this one really grabbed me, Hank. And he was talking about, you don't need other people to believe in you. You need to believe in yourself. And I might be saying a little bit different. We don't necessarily need validation from other people. It's nice. And from some people, it might matter, to have that validation, but you have to have a strong belief in yourself. And there's days where I wake up and I don't feel, 100%, but I still move forward. And any step forward is better than sitting on the couch and doing nothing. So believe in yourself. And as I always like to end my show, I always say, stay empowered. Stay empowered and believe in yourself. And if you have a bad day, just know the sun will rise the next day, and keep at it the next day.
Yes, stay empowered. Stand in your power. And the thing that keeps coming up for me with multiple guests is the notion of passion. If you're going to go into business, be passionate about what it is that you're going to do.
Absolutely. I've had people, Hank, call me, contact me, send me private messages. Do you make a lot of money? Is this a good career field to be in? I'm like, whoa. Okay, there's nothing wrong with making money. Money's not a bad thing. But if you're not passionate about the work, I sincerely wake up thinking every day of the experiences that I went through. Not that I feel victimized, but it's a reminder, why I'm so passionate about people working in safe and respectful work environments, whether they're employee working at a home-based business, or they're working for the man or the woman at a company or federal agency. They do deserve to work in safe, respectful work environments.
So then part of your passion involves helping people so that they don't have to go through some of what you had to go through.
Yeah, I went through a lot. I usually leave a lot of it out, It doesn't need to be said. If you've ever been a government whistleblower, anything about government whistleblowing, a lot of things can happen to you that are very horrific. I lost a really nice home in South Asheville and went through a lot of emotional abuse, bullying, harassment, and such. And that's just unacceptable. So I don't want to see that happen to other people. We can't stop it. We can never stop bullying, because there'll always be some perpetrator out there starting trouble or, going after whistleblower. But hey, we can certainly reduce it, and we can teach people how to stand up for themselves. And I'm also talking about employers too, standing up for their employees.
It's definitely something more employers, I think, should be involved in doing. Would you please tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you?
Well, you can go to workplacebullyingsupport.com, or you can go to dawnwestmoreland.org. Either one will take you to workplacebullyingsupport.com. And it's not just for employees, it's for employers too. I offer a range of services you can check out.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. This has been a pleasure being here with you.
Oh, Hank, it's always great hanging out with you. Thank you. So humbled to be on your show.
Well, we're like a mutual admiration society, I think.
Yes.
Well, to our listeners, thanks for tuning in with us today. Before I sign off, I'd like to say that there are some great resources available for people who run home businesses, including an online community of like-minded home business entrepreneurs. If you'd like to learn more, please drop me an email at hank@hankeder.com. E-D-E-R, hank@hankeder.com. Please join us again next week. We'll be back every Friday at 10 a.m. here on WPVM LP, Asheville 103.7, and on the web globally at WPVMFM.org. Here's wishing all of you a fabulous day of home business success. You're listening to WPVM LP Asheville 103.7, globally at WPVMFM.org. And this is the Home Business Success Show.